So, lately on this channel, we've been spending a lot of time talking about Sony and Microsoft because they have new consoles coming out with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. But for today's video, I wanted to do something different and talk about Nintendo. Because believe it or not, we're not that far away from a new console from Nintendo. It's been 3 years since the Switch has come out, and the Switch is already halfway through its life cycle, so we're probably going to see a new console from Nintendo in 2023, which means that the Switch would have a 6-year life cycle because we're 3 years into the Switch and probably 3 more years until the Switch is obsolete. And over the past 3 years, the Switch has been selling incredibly well. So far, it's sold over 50 million units. I think it's possible that the Switch ends up outselling the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, which both sold around 85 million units each. That is possible, but I do not think that the Switch can outsell the Wii, which sold about 100 million units. But it's still going to end up becoming one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Any way you slice it, it kind of already is. But obviously, Nintendo is in a very unique position this generation because they decided to release the Switch in between the 8th and the 9th generations, so when the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X come out, I think those consoles are going to easily overtake the Switch in terms of relevance and in console sales. People want to have the newest device. The Switch was new and it was a hot thing when it came out back in 2017. But I think with the release of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, Nintendo's going to lose a lot of the momentum that they've been building up over the past few years with the Switch. It's definitely going to start declining in terms of sales. Now, it's obviously not going to fail. Nintendo's not just going to abandon the Switch like they did with the Wii U. It's going to last quite a while, like 6 years, which is pretty reasonable for any console. But I think we're definitely going to see a decline with the Switch over the next 3 years towards the end of its life cycle, which is obviously typical for any console that gets older over time because people have already bought the system. But because of the unique situation Nintendo's in with the Switch being sandwiched in between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, once that PlayStation 5 comes out, Switch sales are going to definitely decline rapidly. Which brings up a pretty good question. Where does Nintendo fit into the 9th generation of consoles when we're talking about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X? How is Nintendo going to follow up on the Switch? What is their next console that they're going to release in 2023, presumably? The most obvious thing for them to do is to just release a Switch 2. The same concept as the Switch, being a hybrid console. You could take it on the go, you could dock it, you could do all those things. But it's also capable of 4K, maybe not 4K that we'd be used to on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. It won't be nearly as powerful as those consoles, but it would be a significant upgrade from the original Switch. Not so sure about battery life because, well, it's going to be more powerful, and the battery, you might have a better battery, but if the graphics are more powerful, you're going to have the same situation where you're only going to have like 3-4 hours of battery life. So that's unfortunately probably not going to change. But overall, it's going to be a more powerful version of the original Switch. They're probably going to call it the Switch 2. Probably not the Switch U, because that's not going to happen. Probably Switch 2, something like that. It's going to be the same premise as the original Switch. Better Joy-Cons, I hope. I hope the Joy-Cons are better. Maybe you have better triggers. You have an actual D-pad on the original Joy-Con and not just like the 4-button layout. I know they were doing that because of the whole like 2-player thing, but it didn't really work. Like no one cares about 1-2 switch. No one cares about arms. You know, like it doesn't work. So maybe we'll actually have a real D-pad on the Joy-Con, and the Joy-Con drift also has to be fixed also. So there's a few things they could do, but I think that the prediction that most people have about Nintendo just releasing a Switch 2, I think that's probably going to happen. I mean, look at the most successful consoles they've had. They had the Nintendo Entertainment System. What'd they do? They released the Super Nintendo. The Wii was a massive success. They tried to replicate that with the Wii U. Now, what I think is going to happen is that they learned their mistakes from the Wii U, and they're not going to replicate that. But either way, I don't think the Switch 2, if the Switch 2 is going to happen, which I think it will happen, I think it will first of all be backwards compatible with the Switch, which will be a great thing, and hopefully they could build up their virtual console library and actually have a real virtual console and not this bullshit subscription service. But Nintendo definitely has to build up their online infrastructure. It's pathetic right now in its current state. You can't even watch Netflix on the Switch, which is just one thing that I just don't understand. I mean, I think even the Wii U had Netflix, the original Wii had Netflix. Why doesn't the Switch have fucking Netflix? And the voice chat, I mean, I've said all these things before. I'm not going to try to beat on the dead horse. I think we could all agree that Nintendo seriously needs to overhaul its online infrastructure. Like, really, they really have to do that. But that's probably what's going to happen is Switch 2, it's not going to be as bad as the Wii U in terms of nobody caring. I think Nintendo, if they decide to release a Switch 2 with the backwards compatibility and all those features, I think it'll be successful, but I don't think under any circumstances can the Switch 2 completely replicate the success of the original Switch. I think it's going to end up performing not as well as the original Switch, and Nintendo's going to have to start coming out with fresh new ideas. Like, I don't think there will be a Switch 3. I don't think this whole hybrid concept is going to last over time and become the new standard with Nintendo when they decide to make new consoles, that every console going forward is going to have the hybrid model. I don't think that's going to happen. I know people really dig the hybrid concept, but I don't think it's going to last forever. I don't think there's going to be a Switch 3. I think there will be a Switch 2, but I don't think this is going to be a thing that's going to last forever and ever and ever. It's more like a passing fad that's going to fade over time, like the motion controls of the Wii, except I think the hybrid concept will last much longer than motion controls. That's definitely a given, but I don't think it's going to last forever. I don't think there's a lot of long-term longevity to such a concept. I think it's a gimmick more than anything else. It's a great gimmick and people love it, but I don't think it's a mainstay in the gaming industry. I just don't see that being a thing. As far as the original Switch, I think at the end of the day, as soon as it's discontinued around 2023, 2024, whenever it's officially discontinued and the final sales numbers are in, I think the Nintendo Switch's final sales number, the final amount of units sold, is going to be somewhere around 85 to 90 million units. I don't think it's going to be much higher than that. Like I said before, I don't think it can surpass the Wii. It certainly won't surpass the PlayStation 4, and obviously not the PlayStation 2. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So, my final prediction for the Switch will be something like 85 to 90 million units sold, and the Switch 2, which I think is going to happen. Now, if that's the official name, I don't know, but you get the meaning. The same hybrid console is going to be an upgraded version of the original Switch, but it's going to be released as a new generation console around 2023 or so. It's going to be like an entirely new console. The Switch 2 will probably sell something more like 45 to 50 million units. I don't think it's going to be a failure like the Wii U, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly successful like the Nintendo Switch ended up doing, or will end up doing, because people will start getting tired of the concept. They're going to want something new. They could maybe throw some VR in there. Maybe the Switch 2 will have VR or something of that sort. Nintendo certainly likes to innovate. They don't want to just re-release the Nintendo Switch, say, hey, here's our Switch 2, come get it. It's more powerful and it's just a Switch 2. Like, they're definitely going to have some type of spin. They're going to add some new gimmick to it to try to get you to buy into it. But it could be VR. I think that's what I'm leaning more towards, that they're going to have some VR support for the Switch 2. Now, will it be as robust as what Sony's going to be doing with the PlayStation VR? Probably not, but they're definitely going to try to integrate VR into their gaming experience while maintaining the original concept of the Switch, which was the hybrid model of being able to play the games on the go and also playing it at home, being able to dock it, all those things, and maybe add some VR onto that. The reason why I don't think they're going to just have a VR system and that's going to be their thing is because, well, Nintendo has a long way to go when it comes to developing VR, because it's a brand new technology. Obviously, they've had Labo and they've experimented with it a little bit, but I don't think Nintendo's going to just release something like a Virtual Boy 2 and just have VR be the entire premise of the system. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think they want to keep the gameplay experience simple. That's something Nintendo has always been great at doing, is keeping things simple. The Wiimote and Nunchuck was such an easy thing to pick up and get into. Everyone's grandma was into that. It was such an easy concept, but VR and all this stuff, like, I mean, it could happen, but I don't think it's going to be a main priority of Nintendo in releasing their new console like Sony is with their PlayStation VR. I just don't think those two companies are really thinking the same way. My really, really long-term prediction is Nintendo's going to release another console around 2027, 2028, and it's essentially going to be just like the PlayStation 6 in the sense that it's just a standard console. Obviously, maybe you're going to have VR in that. Like, you'll have something to entice people to buy the system. You'll have new features. You'll have new innovations in the gameplay experience. But overall, it's going to be more of a traditional console than Nintendo's been doing in recent years. I mean, you've had the Wii, which was motion control, the Wii U, which was a sequel to the Wii, Nintendo Switch, which is focused on the hybrid gimmick. I think Nintendo's going to release a console in 2028, 2027, around that time, that's going to be more like a traditional console, like the Super Nintendo was, like the Nintendo 64 was, in the sense that it's going to be matched with the PlayStation in terms of graphical power. Like, Nintendo's going to get into power again. I think that's definitely going to happen in the long-term future. Because with a lot of the decisions Microsoft has been making lately, weakening their position in the console market and allowing Sony to further monopolize the console market, I think Nintendo's going to be enticed to try to make a console that directly competes with Sony. And oh yeah, people are going to say, there's not going to be no console in 2028. Consoles will soon be a thing of the past. We're all going to be streaming in the future. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to really happen. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a 10th generation. I think there will be an 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th generation of consoles. I think there will always be a market for consoles. And I don't even think the streaming thing is ever going to take off like people think it will. You can call me a traditionalist or whatever, someone who's naive about the future. I don't understand the future. I just don't think that the streaming market really fits with the gaming industry as well as it fits with television, movies, and music, which is a bubble that's already starting to burst in those industries. Netflix, all these streaming services that are popping up, they have a serious problem right now with the TV industry with the oversaturated market. So I don't think streaming is even the long-term solution for the other industries. But the future of the gaming industry is definitely uncertain. It's changing constantly. And I'm just some random guy on the internet offering my own predictions. I don't have a crystal ball. I could definitely be wrong on a lot of these things, but this is just my feeling on how things are going. I do think Nintendo's going to eventually start competing more directly with Sony, and we're going to really start seeing that around the time of the PlayStation 6. I actually made a video already talking about my predictions for the 10th generation of consoles and how that's going to play out. So definitely check out that video if you haven't seen it, because I definitely make a lot of interesting predictions in that video. But I want to talk more about Nintendo specifically because they're a company that people don't really talk about right now. Obviously, people are hyped about the PlayStation and the Xbox and that new generation of consoles coming. But people are definitely sleeping on Nintendo. I think Nintendo has the potential of reclaiming their throne as the largest console manufacturer if they play their cards right. I think they're definitely setting those stages right now, and it'll definitely take some time, but I think that's what's going to happen in the long term. I think it's going to be Sony, Nintendo, and also maybe somebody else too. Maybe something like an Amazon or another company that's very familiar with hardware. I talk more about that in that video about the 10th generation. But as far as Nintendo goes, I think that they're going to stick in the console race much longer than people think they are. People talk about Nintendo stop making consoles, and they're going to focus on mobile phones, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. I don't think Nintendo's going to stop making consoles anytime soon. I think they would have if the Switch failed. If the Switch failed like the Wii U, I think Nintendo would have started setting the stage for, okay, maybe start going third-party, putting their games on PlayStation, on Xbox, Steam. But it looks a lot more likely that Nintendo's going to last longer than Microsoft, which we may be seeing their last Xbox with the Series X. But let me know what you guys think about the future of Nintendo. What do you think will come after the Switch? Do you think it'll be a Switch 2, like I said? Do you think it'll be something completely different? And I went further along and talked about what comes after the Switch 2. What do you guys think about that prediction? Do you think it'll hold up? Do you think I'm completely off the bat? Or really, it's anyone's guess, right? I mean, that's really probably the most likely thing, is that I could be right, someone else can be right. I mean, we could all be wrong. Right? That's the fun thing about speculation and predictions, is that nobody knows the actual future. No one knows what the actual outcome will be until it actually happens, right? But anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Bye.